It seems I forgot to take my mute. Let's at least continue from paragraph. We have no idea about how the first self-replicating metabolic capsule of life arose. The first non-cellular forms of life would have originated 3 billion years back. They would have been giant molecules of RNA, protein, polysaccharides. These capsules reproduce their molecules. Perhaps the first cellular form of life did not possibly originate till 2000 million years ago, that is 2 billion years ago. Okay, we got to know, I got to know because the stream was muted. I got to know that 4 billion years ago, it was stated here that 4 billion years ago, life originated first. Life originated was speculated to be around 4 billion years ago. That is 500 million years after the formation of Earth. But the non-cellular forms of life, it was only thought to be of chemical evolution, like organic molecules. The first self-replicating metabolic capsule of life arose. That is not okay. The first non-cellular forms of life, that is giant molecules of RNA, protein, and polysaccharides. These organic molecules, these are non-cellular forms of life, could have originated 3 billion years back. 3 billion years back, these large molecules of DNA, RNA, protein, and polysaccharides should have arisen 3 billion years ago. And these capsules reproduce their molecules, perhaps the first. Okay, it was believed that these capsules actually reproduce their molecules, meaning using the atmosphere's like abundance of all kind of inorganic molecules, they basically use those and formed more of their kind of molecules, like RNA replicating, like RNA replication might have been possible, or the polysaccharides getting replicated might have been possible. It's not completely known how they did it, like how the molecules actually did it. It is not known even now. It is, that's why they said perhaps. And the first cellular form of life, that is a self-replicating form of life, did not possibly originate till about 2 billion years ago, 2000 million years ago. Basically 4 billion years ago, inorganic organic molecules started forming. 3 billion years ago, they became very large molecules, and they could have possibly started replicating themselves. And 2 billion years ago, it was believed that the first cellular form of life possibly originated. Possibly originated. The first cellular form of life originated about 2 billion years ago, or close to that, 2000 million years ago. And this originated form of life were probably single cells. All life forms were in water environment in only. Okay, all were like, we can say, all life forms originated on water environment only, not on land. The first life is speculated to be in water environment only. This version of biogenesis, that is the first form of life, arose slowly through evolutionary forces from non-living molecules, is accepted by majority. This, like what Oparin and Haldane proposed was that first there was inorganic molecules. Due to chemical evolution, they became organic molecules, which was proved by S.L. Miller in 1953. I'll talk about the experiment later. And chemical evolution was therefore proved, but how the first metabolically replicating life originated is still not known. But most of the scientists believe that first inorganic molecules turned into organic molecules, and these organic molecules started self-replicating, and then came the first form of life, that is called protobiont, or the first cellular life originated around 2 billion years ago. And from small changes, this single cellular life in water environment slowly started changing basically, and now the complex life was formed from simple life through millions of years of changing, through billions, actually billions of years of changing. The first form of life slowly arose. Evolutionary forces from non-living molecules is accepted by majority. However, once formed, how the first cellular forms of life could have evolved into complex biodiversity of today is the fascinating story that will be discussed below. We do not yet know how the metabolic, like how the RNA or like inorganic, or I mean organic molecules started to replicate, that is not known. But how this first formed 2 billion years ago, the first cellular formed life, how it began to become complex, more and more complex, and how we are existing right now, what were our ancestors, who were our ancestors, what were they doing, everything comes under basically evolution. Complex biodiversity of today is a fascinating story that will be discussed below. Now, okay, that is the first topic completed. Evolution of life forms. It's a theory. There are many theories for evolution, just like how for origin of life forms there are many theories. Here as well, evolution of life forms, there are also many theories. Let's see some. Conventional religious literature tells us about the theory of special creation. This theory has three conditions. One, that all living organisms, species or types that we see today were created as such. Two, that life diversity was always the same since creation and will be the same in the future also. Three, the earth is about 4,000 years old. All these ideas were strongly challenged during the 19th century based on observation made during a sea voyage in a small sail ship called HMS Beagle around the world. Charles Darwin concluded that existing life forms share similarities to varying degrees, not only among themselves but also with life forms that existed millions of years ago. Okay, it's basically about the first theory we saw here is the special creation theory. Basically, this theory believed that this is a religious conventional theory. Basically, what this theory believed that is that every living organism was formed as it was, like humans were formed as humans, goats were formed as goats, and everything formed as we see today using some kind of divine power. That is what was the first belief. And the second belief, they believed that everything will remain same now and later as well. Okay, let's take small break. Okay, let's continue. Evolution of life forms, a theory. The first theory was special creation created by God. As it was there as the first. All organisms were created as such itself, and they will be like that only in the where in the past they were same in the past, and they will be same in the future as well. Third, they believed that earth is about 4000 years ago, I mean 4000 years old, and all creation started 4000 years ago. This was the theory of special creation, and these ideas were strongly challenged during the 19th century. uh, Not many people, like many people, began to doubt the ideas, like they did not believe, as this was not very acceptable to many scientists and such, and even people themselves stopped believing such theories in the 19th century. And based on observation made during a sea voyage by Charles Darwin in a small ship called as HMS Beagle around the world, Charles Darwin concluded that existing life forms, share similarities to varying degree, not only among themselves, but also with life forms that existed millions of years ago. Basically, after his sea voyage, Charles Darwin's sea voyage, he went on a sea voyage in a ship called HMS Beagle, and his observation was that uh, many of the living organisms across the world had many similarities, not only among themselves, but also with organisms millions of that existed millions of years ago. Many such life forms do not exist anymore. There had been extinctions of different life forms in the years gone by, just as new life forms arose at different periods of history of Earth. So, what the special creation theory believes was that the number of organisms and types of organisms will remain same forever. But here we can observe that many life forms did go extinct as well. Many organisms like were born but went extinct. That kind of organisms were there, and also new kind of organisms were also getting born. So this was not very same as the theory of this was not accepting the theory of special creation. There has been gradual evolution of life forms. Any population has built in variation in characteristics. Those characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions, climate, food, physical factors, etc., would outbreed others that are less endowed to survive under such natural conditions. What this line states or like explains is why species would go extinct. In the modern day, we can say species go extinct because humans are hunting them, exploiting them, and such. But in the olden days, when humans only did not exist, why did the organisms go extinct? That is what this line here is, this paragraph or this two to three lines is explaining. There has been gradual evolution of life forms. Any population has built-in variation character, as we see in a family itself. Like if we see in a specific family, any kind of family, their family, it's not like the father, the son, the mother, everyone are having exactly identical characters. That is not true. That is not possible or not found either. So there are many characteristics, there are many changes in an organism, and these small changes lead to evolution is what many believe. Any population would have built-in variation characteristics, those characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions would outbreed others and less endowed to survive under natural conditions. Basically, if there was a green color and a red color ladybug, this is a very popular example. If there was a leaf and ladybugs are insects, let's represent these dots as ladybugs. There are two types, green ones and red ones, and this is the leaf. So if we see between red ladybugs and green ladybugs, the predators can easily identify red ladybugs because their color is very vibrant and they can easily be found out. So predators will naturally hunt red ladybugs easily, and because of that, the red ladybugs will get reduced in number and slowly they will go extinct. This is how extinction happens. And the remaining green ladybugs, these are the only guys who survived, so they will continue replicating, their progeny will increase and they will flourish. This is called as natural selection or survival of the fittest. As the green ladybugs had the characteristic ability to survive, they survived. Whereas lead ladybugs, they did not have the capacity to survive in that population, so they died, or basically they went extinct. That is what natural selection is, and depending on those characteristics which enable some organisms to survive better in natural conditions, climate, food, physical factors would outbreed others that are less endowed to survive under such natural conditions. Basically, who are fit to survive, they will survive. Who are not fit to survive, they will go extinct, and the fit to survive will continue to reproduce and they will be the only one to flourish. Another word used in is fitness of the individual or the population. The fitness, according to Darwin, refers only ultimately and only to reproductive fitness as they can proliferate. Hence, those who are better fit in an environment leave more progeny than others. These therefore will survive more and hence are selected by the nature. And here we are only talking about specific environments. It's not like just because in my previous example about the ladybirds or ladybugs, there it's not like now we can't find red color ladybirds anywhere. They did not completely go extinct. In that specific kind of environment, that is on a green leaf, ladybirds that are red ladybirds found it hard to survive. And so their population on the red leaf, I mean the green leaf, was reduced and only the green ladybirds survived. But what if the in another place, in somewhere far away from there or even near, there was a red color leaf which had the same kind of population? In the same world, there is another place where there's a red leaf and there are red color ladybirds and green color ladybirds. And here, red color ladybirds are more fit to survive. So basically, in that place, in that system, we can say only the red ladybirds will survive and the green ladybirds will go extinct. Therefore, they will survive and hence are selected by nature in that specific place. He called it natural selection and amplified it as a mechanism of evolution. Let us also remember that Alfred Wallace, a naturalist who worked in Malay archipelago, had some had also come to similar conclusions around the same time. In due course of time, apparently, new types of organisms are recognizable. All the existing life forms share similarities and share common ancestors. However, these ancestors were present at different periods in history of Earth, epochs, periods, and eras. The geological history of Earth closely correlates with the biological history of Earth. A common permissible conclusion is that Earth is very old, not thousands of years, but billions of years old. Okay, it's all drawing the same conclusions, which is very known here. What they are saying is there is a important remember lines. Wallace, Alfred Wallace, he worked in Malay archipelago and he came to the same conclusion of Charles Darwin around the same time. Important to know. M- Malay archipelago, Alfred Wallace. Malay archipelago, Alfred Wallace came to the same conclusion as Charles Darwin. And statement based question was, there's an important statement based question here, I believe. The geological history of Earth closely correlates with biological history of Earth, because the like we will read the like the before lines, prior lines. All existing life forms have similarities and share common ancestors, and why the evolutionary like biological history of Earth has shares or correlates with geological history of Earth is because these common ancestors, are present at different periods in the history of Earth, depending on the nature at that time. If we see nature, if we expect like in the early times when Earth was very hot or very high temperature, at that time only the organisms which were resistant to this heat could survive. But right now, or after the Earth completely cooled down, there was no need for like specific survival of only heat resistant organisms. Even like cold resistance or like normal organisms which could not resist heat also came into existence. That is how that is how maybe that is the reason why in desert we see organisms which are fit to the desert, which are fit to the desert. And in snowy areas like Antarctica, we see organisms which are fit to the cold, because only those species actually survived. If they also did not survive, the land would have become a barren land, no life. It is all based on natural selection, fitness of the organism, basically characteristics of survival of the organism, and it is basically chance and natural selection. As for that, those are the important lines. The geological history of Earth closely correlates with biological history of Earth. Now let's go to the third topic. What are the evidences for evolution? We always need to have evidence for everything. Otherwise, it is not completely proved. For any proof, we need evidence. Any proof of any kind of theory, we need evidence. So, what are the evidences for evolution? Evidence that evolution of life forms had indeed taken place on Earth has come from many quarters. Like how we believe that evolution actually took place on Earth and not aliens invading Earth came, like it was in many kind of things we found out this evidence. Fossils are remains of hard parts of life forms that are found in rocks. Rocks form sediments, and a cross section of Earth's crust indicates the arrangement of sediments one over the other during the long history of Earth. Different aged rock sediments contain fossils of different life forms who probably died during the formation of the particular sediment. Some of them appear similar to modern organisms. They represent extinct organisms, dinosaur. A study of fossils in different sedimentary layers indicate the geological period in which they existed. The study showed that life forms varied over time, and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological time spans. Basically, The evidences of evolution came from many kind of things, and the first of them were fossils. What are fossils? Fossils are remains of hard parts such as bone, teeth, etc. of animals or life forms that are found in rocks. Basically, if there was a volcanic eruption and an organism is completely engulfed by lava, then the after the lava solidifies, the organism will still be left inside the sedimented lava. This is a kind of fossil formation. Rocks form sediments, and cross section of Earth's crust indicate the arrangement of sediments one over the other during the long history of Earth. And basically, studying different layers of Earth, we can understand which like era the organism actually existed in. The lower the Earth, like the lower the organism is into the Earth, the older the life form. Different age rocks sediments contain fossils of different life forms who probably died during the formation of the particular sediment. Some of them appear similar to modern organisms. They represent extinct organisms, example dinosaur. A study of fossils in different sedimentary layers indicates the geological period in which they existed. Okay, that's what I said. The study showed that life forms varied over time, and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological time spans, meaning certain organisms only existed for certain amount of time, and after they became extinct. Hence, new forms of life have arisen at different times in history of Earth. All this is called paleontological evidence. Paleontology, fossil. Do you remember how the ages of fossils are calculated? Do you recollect the method of radioactive dating and the principles behind procedure? One of the ways of calculating how old the found fossil is based on a method called carbon dating. We know that there are radioactive isotopes which are present in all kind of organic molecules, or basically carbon. Basically, this carbon, or division of or fission or radioactivity is basically a first order reaction, and we can calculate the half period based on that. We can calculate the I'm not going to the method. Basically, carbon dating is a method. It uses radioactive dating, using which they will find the age of the fossils. That's pretty much all we need to know. It's either called carbon dating or radioactive dating, and this fossils is called paleontological evidence. The next evolution, like support for evolution, that is embryological support for evolution, was also proposed by Ernst Haeckel based upon the observation of certain features during embryonic stage common to all vertebrates that are present in adult. Okay, it's important to remember the name of the guy who proposed it. Embryological support for evolution was proposed by Ernst Haeckel. How he proposed it was his observation of certain features during embryonic stage of all vertebrates that are present in all kind of organisms. Embryonic stage is only during the embryo, like when it is in the fetus, like in the fetus stage where it's in the mother's womb. Only at that time, or in case of eggs, that is called embryological time. It's absent when, if we see what Ernst Haeckel observed was that most of the organisms during the embryonic stage looked very similar to each other. There's no photo given here, but Basically, what Ernst Haeckel proposed or observed that different organisms had very much similarities in their embryonic stage. It almost looked exactly the same. It very much common points in the embryo which Ernst Haeckel observed, and he came to a conclusion that there must be a relation between all the organisms. Although a human looks very different from a cow or a rabbit, when in the embryonic stage, the embryos looked very similar to him. Embryological support for evolution was also proposed by Ernst Haeckel based upon the observation of certain features during embryonic stage common to all vertebrates that are absent in adult. For example, embryos of all vertebrates, including human, develop a row of vestigial gill slits behind the head, but it is a functional organ only in fish and not found in any other adult vertebrate. An example is gill slits. We have studied a part about this in Animal Kingdom in class 11. Okay, basically the embryos, all embryos of most of the vertebrates, all vertebrates basically had gill slits in their embryo. Normally, gill slits is only functional in fish. Fish have gill slits as they are live in water and they need gills in help of oxygen for consumption of oxygen. They need gills for gas exchange. But we humans or other terrestrial life forms do not need gill slits. But when he observed that all the organisms had gill slits in their embryonic stage, Haeckel came to a conclusion that there must be a common ancestor or a relation or common ancestor evolving into all kind of organisms that led to that was the his basis of embryological support for evolution. However, this proposal was disapproved on careful study performed by Carl Ernst von Baer. He noted that embryos never pass to the adult stages of other animals. Comparative anatomy and morphology shows similarities and differences among organisms of today and those that existed millions of years ago. Let's see a little more about the embryological supportive evolution. It was proposed by Ernst Haeckel based upon observation of certain features during embryonic stage common to all vertebrates that are absent in adult. For example, embryos of all vertebrates, including human, develop a row of vestigial gill slits just behind the head, but it is functional organ only in fish and not found in any other adult vertebrate. However, okay, Ernst Haeckel not only proposed that there were some similarities in embryonic stage, I believe he proposed that all the vertebrates undergo the same embryonic stage. That's what he kind of believed. He believed that all the vertebrates undergo the same embryonic stage but later develop into different organisms. But this was later disproved by Carl Ernst von Baer. Ernst von Baer, he disproved that the embryos are similar, but they never have the same stage. They never pass through the same stages. He noted that embryos never pass through the adult stages of other animals. Like, even though the embryo of a rabbit and a human is same, the rabbit can't just rapidly develop into a human. That is not possible. I believe that's what this Carl Ernst von Baer has noted. Okay, leaving the embryological evidence and paleontological evidence aside, let's go to the third one. Comparative anatomy and morphology shows similarities and differences among organisms of today and those existed years ago. That's okay. Like if we see this one here, these are dinosaurs which existed many years ago. we see, there are some morphological similarities like having four legs, having two eyes, having teeth. These are all some morphological similarities like by symmetry, bisymmetry. All of these are similarities. Like even in a crocodile, if we see, there are such similarities here: a tail, four legs, teeth, two eyes. There are such similarities, but it's not completely the same. Comparative anatomy and morphology shows similarities and differences among organisms of today and those existed years ago. Such similarities can be interpreted to understand whether common ancestors were shared or not. For example, whales, bats, cheetah, and human, all mammals, share similarities in pattern of bones or forelimbs. Though these forelimbs perform different function in these animals, they have similar anatomical structure. All of them have humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges in their forelimbs. Hence, in these animals, the same structure developed along different directions due to adaptation to different needs. This divergent evolution and these structures are homologous. Homology indicates common ancestry. Other examples are vertebrate hearts or brains. In okay, basically, when we compare anatomy and morphology of all kind of organisms, we see that in all mammals, we see a similarity in anatomy of the forelimb. In anatomy of the forelimb, this is example of homologous organs, plants and animals. Here if we see in man, although they look very different, the parts they have are very similar of humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. All these organisms, also, although they are very different, have the same forelimb structure. Although they have the same forelimb structure, like if we take for human, we use our hands or forelimbs for many different things, for writing, for painting, etc. If we take, cheetah uses its forelimbs for running, whale as flappers, bat for flying, etc. So, although there are many different functions these forelimbs perform, the basic structure remains same. These kind of uh, organs are called as homologous organs. Another example of this homology is seen in terms of heart chambers or heart and brain structure also. Brain structure and heart. These are the similarities. Now, in case of plants, if we see bougainvillea and cucurbita, in these plants, here in bougainvillea, the axillary bud develops into a thorn, but in cucurbita, the axillary bud develops into a tendril for climbing or support. Although they are formed from the same kind of axillary bud, they perform different functions. Thorn is for protection, tendril is for support or climbing. And what this divergent evolution means is that there is a single point and this single organism diverges into many paths like a man, a whale, a bat, but all in all, there is a common ancestry here. They're analogous organs, I mean homologous organs. There is a point of diversion, all the where this led to creation of many other species. Okay, this divergent evolution and these structures are homologous. Homology indicates common ancestries. Other examples are vertebrate hearts or brains. In plants also, thorn and tendrils of bougainvillea and cucurbita represent homology. Homology is based on divergent evolution, whereas analogy refers to situation exactly opposite. If we understood homology, organs performing organs having similar structure and performing different functions, the organisms having common ancestor is called homologous. Homologous organs or homology. Now, if we talk about analogy is basically opposite of homology. Analogy is when two different organs that perform the same function but are different in structure and do not have a common ancestor. Conclusion, they do not have a common ancestor because although they perform a same function, their structure is very different. Like if we can understand this, like for a convergent evolution, we understood divergent as a single dot spreading and developing into different habitats. Then what is convergent evolution? Convergent, different kind of organism come to the same habitat and all of them start to develop similarities. And this is the point of conversion. Basically we can understand is like if we take an example, if there is a specific habitat that uh, if we take a specific habitat that requires flying, like let's assume that organisms, if they do not learn flight in that specific environment, they cannot survive. In such a kind of environment, if there are organisms, the organisms in that environment, all the organisms which have the ability to flight will survive, but all the organisms which do not have will go extinct. So in that point, at a specific point of time, in the point of conversion, in that specific habitat, all the organisms will have same kind of abilities, the same function of flying, which is very essential for life. And so this is called convergent evolution. It's kind of like that, although if one organism comes from America, one organism comes from Asia, Australia, whatever it might be, or Antarctica, different places, and they are isolated in a specific habitat, they cannot go elsewhere, then depending on that habitat, they need to, if they want to survive, they need to have the characteristics that let them survive in that kind of habitat. So they begin to develop common similarities, basically organs that perform same function. Like for a mouth for eating, like if we examine or understand all the organisms that exist on earth, they have some kind of mouth. Although the mouth of an ant and a human is very different, it still functions as a mouth. And ant is not even a vertebrate, but they still have a mouth. This is similar to a convergent evolution. In this world, it was mostly uh, for basically in this world, if you want to survive, you need to intake like food or nutrition. If there is no nutrition, the organisms cannot survive. In such a case, all the organisms needed some organ to perform a function that needs that is to intake nutrition. So all of the organisms, although different structures of organism, develop to have a mouth. Or no, it's not exactly right to say they develop to have a mouth. It is more correct to say only the organisms that had a mouth survived. The organisms that did not have a mouth basically died or went extinct. It is not a very correct example, but it explains convergent evolution. If we take wings of a butterfly and wings of birds, they look alike. They are not anatomically similar structures, though they perform similar functions. Hence, analogous structures are a result of convergent evolution. It's not very correct to, it might not be correct to say it is the best example to understand convergent evolution, as bats and butterflies always do not have the same kind of environment. Okay, let's see adaptive radiation. It's much more clearer to understand there. Result of convergent evolution, different structures evolving for the same function and hence having similarity. Other examples of analogy are the eye of octopus and mammals, or the flippers of penguins and dolphins. These examples are very important to remember. Convergent evolution examples or analogous organs example: flippers of a penguin and a dolphin, eye of an octopus, eye of a mammal, basically eye of an octopus and eye of a mammal. Those are very, they perform the same function but they are very different in structure. Flippers of the penguins and dolphins are the same, they perform the same function but they are very different in function, I mean different in structure. One can say that it is similar habitat that has resulted in selection of similar adaptive features in different groups of organisms, but toward the same function. That's what I said. Sweet potato, a root modification, and potato, a stem modification, is another example for analogy. In the same line of argument, similarities in proteins and genes performing a given function among diverse organisms gives clue to common ancestry. In our previous chapter, molecular basis of inheritance, we saw that in genetic code, the salient features of genetic code, it was mentioned that the genetic code is universal in nature, meaning no matter if we take triple U for example, it codes for the amino acid phenylalanine. It is almost universal in nature. No matter if you take a bacteria, no matter if you take a rabbit, no matter if you take a human, their genetic code in their mRNA sequence, if there is triple U, it will always code for phenylalanine amino acid. That is, that gives us a clue to common ancestry. These biochemical similarities point out to some shared ancestry as structural similarities among diverse organisms. Man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport, or security. Man has domesticated many wild animals and crops. This intensive breeding program has created breeds that differ from other breeds. That are, if we see dogs, we get an example of the number of breeds one can create, but still are of the same group. They are still dogs, but there are many breeds of dogs. This is a kind of divergent evolution, the same kind of structure, same everything, same ancestor, but different uh, different characteristics. It is argued that if within hundreds of years man could create new breeds, could not nature have done the same over millions of years? That is a obvious doubt. Another interesting observation supporting evolution by natural selection comes from England in a collection of moths made in 1850s. This is a very popular story. It's about a black and a white moth in a collection of moths made in 1850s, that is before industrialization set in. It was observed that there were more white-winged moths on the trees than dark-winged or melanized moths. However, in the collection carried out from the same area, but after industrialization, that is in 1920, there were more dark-winged moths in the same area. That is, the proportion was completely reversed. The explanation put forth for this observation was that predators will spot a moth against a contrasting background during post-industrialization period. The tree trunks became dark due to industrial smoke and soot. Under this condition, the white-winged moths did not survive due to predators. Dark-winged or melanized moths survived. Before industrialization set in, thick growth of almost white-colored lichens covered the trees. In the background, the white-winged moths survived, but the dark-colored moths were picked out by the predators. Do you know that lichens can be used as industrial pollution indicators? They will not grow in areas that are polluted. Hence, moths that were able to camouflage themselves, that is, hide in the background, survived. This understanding supported by the fact that in areas where industrialization did not occur, example in rural areas, the count of melanic moths was low. This showed that in a mixed population, those that can better adapt, survive, and increase in population size. Remember that non-variant is completely went out. Okay, a very popular story of the England's moths. There were, let's see what happened. Basically, there was a conducted survey in 1850s. There was no industrialization at that time, not many factories. In the 1850s, they observed that on trees there were larger populations of white moths compared to melanized or black moths. This is observed in England in 1850s, pre-industrialization. Why only the white-winged moth survived? Why large populations of white-winged moth existed compared to less black-winged moths is because at that time during the pre-industrialization era, there are almost white color lichens growing on the trees. White color lichens covered the whole trees, meaning these white color moths easily got camouflaged in the white color background. But melanized or black color moths could not camouflage themselves because the background is white color. And if I take a black dot here, this is a black background, I mean a white background. If we take a black dot here, then compare it with another gray color dot I'm going to take here, compared to both of them, we can observe that the dark color uh, dot here is more vibrant or more visible for us. And not only for us, in the moth's case, it was the moths were more visible. In a white color background, the black moths were clearly more visible for the predators. So they got hunted by the predators and they were eaten. And thus, most of the white color moths survived. And because of getting hunted most of the time, the population of the black color moths was reduced. This is in the pre-industrialization era in the 1850s, but in the 1920s, that is 1920, the same survey in the same region was once more conducted. This is after industrialization, and some information about lichens is given. We already know this information from biological classification. Lichens are basically pollution indicators. They act as pollution indicators. Wherever there is pollution, we do not see growth of lichens. And in the 1920s, where there was high industrialization era going on, there was large amount of pollution, because of which all the lichens on the trees in the city urban areas died. And due to the soots and pollution, the trees became dark color. Now the situation is exactly reverse. In a darker background, the black moths easily got camouflaged, but white moths, they were not camouflaged in a background. So this time the prey for the predators was not the black moths but the white moths. Because of that, now in the same areas the proportion was the black moths are in higher population compared to white moths. This is the observation. Similar excess use of herbicides, pesticides, and in case of, before going to that, in here if we see in rural areas where there was not much pollution, there the situation remains same. On the white moths population was higher there, but only in the polluted areas was the black moth population higher. Similarly, excess use of herbicides, pesticides, etc. has only resulted in selection of resistant varieties in much lesser timescale. This also is true for microbes against which we employ antibiotics or drugs against eukaryote organisms cell. Hence, resistant organisms cells are appearing in a time scale of months or years and not centuries. Okay, if we use excess of herbicides, pesticides, etc., it has only resulted in selection of resistant varieties in a much lesser time scale. Basically, whatever, if we use a like pesticide, if we use a pesticide, there are or a herbicide if we think, or a weedicide in farms where weeds are killed. Now, in a thousand weeds, let's assume one weed was herbicide resistant or weedicide resistant, was resistant to weedicide. The 999 weeds will die, but this one weed will survive and it will continue to proliferate. And this one weed, which was resistant, will continue to proliferate, and in no time at all, the whole farm will be occupied by weeds one more time, but this time the weeds are herbicide or weedicide resistant, and they will not be killed by using of weedicide. Excess use of herbicides, pesticides, etc. has only resulted in selection of resistant varieties. We are actually selecting the resistant varieties in much, and this will lead to, this will be in much lesser time scale. This is also true for microbes against which we employ antibiotics or drugs against eukaryotic organisms. Hence, resistant organism cells are appearing in a time scale of months or years and not centuries. These are examples of evolution by anthropogenic action that are using pesticides or herbicides. We are selecting specific herbs and spreading them, and using antibiotics, we are giving rise to organisms which are resistant to antibiotics. This is called anthropogenic evolution by anthropogenic action. This also tells us that evolution is not directed process in a sense of determinism. It is a stochastic process based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in organism. It's a very important definition to understand and comprehend. Evolution is a stochastic process based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in organism. Here it is expressed that two things lead to evolution. One, natural selection, as we checked before, the ladybirds one, that kind. And two, mutation. In genetic inheritances, we read something about mutation is a change in or alteration in the genetic sequence which leads to drastic change in the phenotypic expression of the organism or doesn't change at all, that is called a mutation. We will see much more about it in this chapter itself, later sections. Based on chance events is natural selection, like depends on who can survive better. The organism that survived lives on and continues proliferating. The organism that did not survive exists as a part of history. Okay, now let's come to the next topic, that is the fourth topic. What is adaptive radiation? We read something about Darwin, Charles Darwin, and his voyage in the sail ship HMS Beagle in the previous section, when what he said reduced the belief in special creation theory. Now let's see more about Charles Darwin and his theories. During his journey, Darwin went to Galapagos Island. Very important to remember the name, Galapagos Island. And we read something similar about Alfred Wallace in Malay Archipelago, he also gave similar to what Charles Darwin found. He also found the same thing or similar thing and published in the same time. But there it's Malay Archipelago. Here it is Galapagos Island. And when Charles Darwin went to Galapagos Island, there he observed an amazing diversity of creatures. Of particular interest, small black birds, later called Darwin's finches, amazed him. He realized that there were many varieties of finches in the same island. All the varieties, he conjectured, evolved on the island itself from the original seed-eating features, other forms with altered beaks arose, enabling them to become insectivorous and vegetarian finches. This process of evolution of different species in a given geographical area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography, habitats, is called adaptive radiation. Darwin's finches represents one of the best example of this phenomena. Okay, then let's continue. Yes, okay. Varieties of finches in the same island. In island, all the varieties he conjectured evolved in the island itself from the original seed-eating finches. Many other forms with altered beaks arose, enabling them to become insectivorous and vegetarian finches. This process of evolution, different species in given geographical area starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas that as geography habitats is called adaptive radiation. Basically, in Galapagos Island, Darwin observed this finches, and there were we know. Let's just assume this like this Galapagos Island is not a small island. There are many habitats in this island. There is a let's assume there are three places. There is a a place that is filled with insects. Second place there is filled with fruits, and third place that is filled with seeds. These are the three habitats that Darwin finches had. Habitat 1, insects. Habitat 2, seeds. 3, fruits. There are these three habitats are there. These finches are born in the island itself. He thought that Darwin thought that these finches were born in the island itself and then diversified into many kinds of finches. They evolved in the island itself. So for finches which were in the insectivorous habitat, in this habitat, though in that habitat, the finches in that habitat could only survive if they have a beak that is specified for eating insects. Only those kind of uh, finches would survive in this insectivorous region. Other kind of fruit eating and seed eating finches will not survive in the insectivorous region. Now coming to the second region. In this second region, it is filled with seeds. And in this region, only the finches that have a beak specialized for eating and picking up seeds can survive. Other kind of finches cannot survive here. They will go extinct. Coming to the third region, in this region, there are finches, mainly the habitat is filled with fruits. So the finches which only have beak specialization for eating fruits and so on can survive. Others cannot survive here. So depending on the habitat, although the finches were same kind of species of birds, they began to develop different kinds of beaks, these ones, based on their habitat specialization. That is one thing. That is a adaptive radiation, a single point, a single species of finches spread to different habitats of the Galapagos Island, and depending on that, they developed specializations in that area. That is adaptive radiation, and also is an example for divergent radiation. Another example of this adaptive radiation is an Australian marsupials. A number of marsupials, each different from other, evolved from an ancestral stock, but all within the Australian island continent. When we see the Australian island continent and we see it's filled with marsupials, if we take as like, and it is understood that all the marsupials are homologous, are having homologous organs, meaning they have a same ancestor. They have a same ancestor and they have similar homologous organ basically. And because of this, or more to say that, let's just understand there was a single ancestral marsupial, and from them all these different marsupials developed. This is adaptive radiation, divergent evolution, homology. Marsupial radiation is divergent evolution, and homology, homologous. But what is convergent? There is a confusion here. When compared with placental mammals, Australians are also, like Australian marsupials also are also mammals, but they are isolated in the Australian continent. They do not have common ancestries. They might have in very long time ago, but most of the time they do not have common ancestries with our placental mammals, meaning from other continents. But what is surprising is, okay, this is divergent evolution. Now let's come to a separate topic, that is comparing with placental mammals and understanding or observing. There's a common point for all of them, or like similarities in all of them. Like for example, both the mole, placental mole, and the marsupial mole both have same habitat. Both live underground, or basically have the same kind of hobby, or let's just say habitat. But there is no common ancestral linkage or anything like that. Marsupial mole is in Australia, and the normal mole is somewhere else. Marsupial mole is completely isolated from the placental mammals. But still, because these both moles have the same ancestry, they have the same ancestry and not ancestry, same kind of habitat, they live in the same kind of habitat, that is burrowing holes and all. Because of that, they have similar functions, not organs performing similar functions. These kind of hands helped in digging. This is analogy, meaning that they are organs which perform same function but different structure. And in case of a numbat and an anteater, both grew up in a habitat that facilitated more number of ants. They have they perform the same function, that is ant eating, or basically that's that's all. But they have same organs that perform same functions but different structure. Even though they are very separated, organisms in the same kind of habitat developed into same kind of, or like similar function organs in both the places. It might be hard to understand, but it's better to read. When more than one adaptive radiation appear to have occurred in an isolated geographical area representing different habitats, one can call this convergent evolution. Placental mammals in Australia also exhibit adaptive radiation, evolving into varieties of such placental mammals, each of which appears to be similar to corresponding marsupial. Placental wolf and Tasmanian wolf marsupial. Now, coming to biological evolution. The next topic is biological evolution. Evolution by natural selection, in a true sense, would have started with cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capability originated on Earth. The essence of Darwinian theory about evolution is natural selection. The rate of appearance of new forms is linked to the life cycle or the lifespan. Microbes that divide fast have the ability to multiply and become billions of individuals within hours. A colony of bacteria, say A, growing on a given medium, has built-in variation in terms of ability to utilize a feed component. A change in the medium composition would bring out only the part of the population, say B, that can survive under the new conditions. In due course of time, this variant population outgrows the other and appears as new species. This would happen within days. For the same thing to happen in fish or fowl would take millions of years, as the lifespan of these animals are in years. Here we say the fitness of B is better than A under the new conditions. Nature selects for fitness. One must remember that so-called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited. Hence, there must be genetic basis for getting selected and to evolve. Another way of saying the same thing is that some organisms are better adapted to survive in otherwise hostile environment. Adaptability is inherited. It has genetic basis. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. Basically, a repeat of everything. They gave an example taking a bacteria colony. If we take a bacteria colony and we add an antibiotic or a basically let's take an antibiotic. We added an antibiotic. All the bacteria died except the resistant ones, and in the new environment, in the antibiotic environment, only the new resistant bacteria could survive. So it proliferated in a few days or some less time itself. New species, they became a new species that became antibiotic resistant. This took a few days in bacteria because their lifespan is very less. But if we compare it to, if we take it to fish or fowl, it would take millions of years because their lifespan is in years. Branching descent and natural selection are two key concepts of Darwinian theory of evolution. Even before Darwin, a French naturalist Lamarck had said that evolution of life forms had occurred but driven by use and disuse of organs. He gave the example of giraffes who, in attempt to forage leaves on tall trees, had to adapt by elongation of their necks. As they passed on this acquired character of elongated neck to succeeding generations, giraffes slowly over the years came to acquire long necks. Nobody believes this conjecture anymore. His evolution process, basically, there was also Lamarck. His theory of evolution was that the organs, there would be evolution based on use and disuse of organs. He gave an examples of giraffes who in the initial days did not have such a long neck, but due to the uh, lack of, or in the habitat where they had a lack of ground leaves, they repeatedly used their neck in an attempt to eat tree leaves which are in a higher elevation compared to ground leaves or ground grasses, and in attempt of doing that for generations uh, using and disusing their organ, that is a neck, it he believed that it elongated slowly by the generation. Is evolution a process? Is a process or the result of a process? The world we see, inanimate and animate, is only the success stories of evolution. When we describe the story of this world, we describe evolution as a process. On the other hand, when we describe the story of life on Earth, we treat evolution as a consequence of process called natural selection. Okay, how can we say evolution is a process or a result of a process? Two kind of views. First view, we are talking about how Earth evolved, or when we describe the story of this world, like we can say, like if we say a story like something, some 2 million years ago some monkeys existed or some apes existed which later turned into humans. In this kind of point of view, evolution seems like a process, the process of apes getting converted into humans. That is the first view. In here it's a process. But in the second kind of view, if we take the story of life on earth, That is, if we say in a different way, like let's just say I tell a story and narrate a story, like 1 billion years ago there was origin of life, and this origin of life, as it proliferated, it gave birth to many organisms, and depending on natural selection, only the organisms that were fit to survive survived and remaining died. In this case, natural selection is the process of selecting organisms, and evolution is basically the selected organisms characteristics. Difference between the characteristics between the selected organism, the more efficient organism, which had the capability to survive, and the less efficient organism according to the nature, which did not have the capability to survive in that environment. In such a case, evolution is not a process. Natural selection is the process, but evolution is actually a consequence. We are still not very clear whether to regard evolution and natural selection as processes or end result of unknown processes. It is possible that the work of Thomas Malthus on populations influenced Darwin. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. For example, natural resources are limited, populations are stable in size, except for seasonal fluctuations. Members of a population vary in characteristics. In fact, no two individuals are alike. Even though they look superficially similar, most of variations are inherited. The fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduced maximally. This fact can be seen in growing bacteria population, and the fact that the population size in reality are limited means that there had been competition for resources. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others that could not flourish. The novelty and brilliant insight of Darwin was this: he asserted that variations which are heritable and which make resources utilization better for few adapted to habitat better will enable only those to reproduce and leave more progeny. Hence, for a period of time, for many generations, survivors will leave more progeny, and there would be a change in population characteristic, and hence new forms appear to arise. Okay, let's read that again. We know that natural resources on Earth are not unlimited, they are limited. Populations, like, not on Earth, as not a single organism cannot occupy the whole Earth. We can say that humans did occupy the most of the Earth, so a single species can indeed occupy the whole Earth. Anyways, and but what we need to know is natural resources right now are limited. Populations are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuations. Members of population vary in characteristics. Okay, I said an example before. In a family, no one are alike, even though they are sons and daughters of the same father and mother. There are many differences or variations in the characteristics. This is seen in most of the or all of the populations. Even though they look superficially similar, all humans are alike but not completely alike. Most of variations are inherited, etc. The fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduced maximally. This can be seen in a growing bacterial population. In a colony of bacteria, if for in a petri dish, till a maximum limit, there are for bacteria unlimited resources, due to which every single bacteria in that nutrition medium will exponentially grow in population until they completely fill up the petri dish. That is the example, and the fact that population sizes in reality are limited. In reality, we do not have unlimited resources even for bacteria itself. Only till the ends of the petri plate can the bacteria grow. Above that, it cannot grow more than that due to lack of resources, meaning that there had been competition for resources. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others that could not flourish. If there is limited resources, then not all can survive and reproduce maximally like the bacteria in the petri dish at the initial stages. So only those who are more fit to survive and use the resources more efficiently, the resources of the surrounding more efficiently for themselves, can can be more preferred by the nature and will be selected by the nature and then live on and produce more progeny. That is what Darwin thought. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others that could not flourish. The novelty and brilliant insight of Darwin was that he asserted the variations which are heritable and which make resource utilization better for few adapted to habitat better. We enable only those to reproduce and leave more progeny. Who are more fit to survive, they will survive. Who can make good use of the resources or more efficient use of the resources can survive and leave more progeny. Hence, their kind will flourish. And the kind which could not use the resources efficiently will have a eternal lack of resources and they will get extinct. Hence, for a period of time over many generations, it's not like just one species can survive. Every time the nature is changing, like it completely changes most of the time and many times. That was a little longer than expected. Let's continue. Okay. Mechanism of evolution. Next topic is mechanism of evolution. Think I was about to start this. I think so. What is the origin of this variation and how does speciation occur? Even though Mendel talked of inheritable factors influencing phenotype, Darwin either ignored these observations or kept silence. In the first decade of the 20th century, Hugo de Vries, on his work on evening primrose, brought forth the idea of mutations, large difference arising suddenly in a population. He believed that it is mutation which causes evolution and not the minor variations heritable that Darwin talked about. Mutations are random and directionless, while Darwinian variations are small and directional. Evolution for Darwin was gradual, while De Vries believed mutation caused speciation and hence called it saltation, single-step large mutation. Studies in population genetics later brought out some clarity. Okay, basically, Darwin talked about small heritable changes that occur in over a long periods of time. Mendel did talk about inheritable factors influencing phenotype and etc that we discussed in the fourth chapter, but Darwin did not care about those. He either ignored the observation or kept silence. In 1910s, that is the first decade of the 20th century, 1910, Hugo de Vries, a scientist, his work on an evening primrose, a type of plant, brought forth the idea of mutations. Mutations are the alteration in genetic sequences which lead to change in the phenotypic expression. And based on his work on evening primrose, brought the idea of mutations, these large differences arising suddenly in a population. What Hugo de Vries believed that is that mutations are large changes that happen directionlessly. They do not have a specific direction, and these are the main reasons that lead to speciation. He called it as saltation, a single step large mutation. He believed that this mutation is the sole basis of uh, speciation or saltation according to him. He did not believe in directional and small changes of Darwin that Darwin said, but solely believed that mutation is the sole reason for variation or like speciation and evolution. Or he might not be talking about complete evolution. He might only be talking about basically the speciation. He believed that speciation occurs due to a large change, large single step change. That's pretty much all. The important thing to remember, Darwin's variation is directionful. It has a direction and it is small changes. And Hugo de Vries' mutation is directionless and a large variation. And the name saltation is important. And the name Hugo de Vries is also very important, along with evening primrose. That's the important things in mechanism of evolution. Let's go to the next topic, that is Hardy-Weinberg principle. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence of alleles of a gene or a locus. This frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same through generations. Hardy-Weinberg principle stated it using algebraic equations. Basically, in a given population, If we find out frequency of occurrence of alleles of a gene or a locus, this frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same throughout generations. I'm not sure. Let's check it out. Okay, let's continue. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence of allele or a gene or a locus. This frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same throughout generation. That is the Hardy-Weinberg principle, stated it using algebraic equations. If we take an isolated population not affected by any kind of evolutionary forces, in such a case, the allele frequency for a very large population where there is no chance for random occurrences, like very less chance for um, loss of alleles due to random occurrences if the population was very large. In such a case, the gene pool in the population will remain fixed or constant throughout any kind of generations in this isolated population. That is what is Hardy-Weinberg principle. And if like this constant was this constant flow, or this constant is not maintained, or there is a change in the population, that probably means that there is an evolutionary force acting. We will see more about the factors affecting the Hardy-Weinberg principle in the below sections or below paragraphs. Let's see it out first. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence of alleles of a gene or a locus, and this frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same through generations. Hardy-Weinberg principle stated it using algebraic equations. This principle says that allele frequencies in a populations are stable and is constant from generation to generation. The gene pool, total genes and their alleles in a population remain a constant. This is called as genetic equilibrium. Sum total of all the allelic frequency is 1. We saw that 0.6, 0.4 in the prior topic. That is why if we add 0.6 and 0.1, we still get 1. The total frequency will remain 1. The principle says that allele frequency in a population are stable and is constant from generation to generation, and the gene pool, total genes and their alleles in a population remains constant. This is called as genetic equilibrium. What is genetic equilibrium? The gene pool, the frequency of alleles all remains constant in a specific population. This is called as genetic equilibrium, and the sum total of all allelic frequencies is 1. Individual frequencies, for example, can be named PQ, etc. In a diploid, P and Q represent the frequency of allele A and allele A, small a. The frequencies of AA individuals in a population is simply P square. Okay, simple mathematics. This is simply stated in another way, that is, probability that an allele A, the frequency of P, appear on both the chromosomes of a diploid individual is simply the product of the probabilities, that is P square. Similarly, of AA it is Q square, of A comma A it is 2PQ. Okay, what they are saying is, if we take P and Q as frequencies, meaning like 0.2 values, if for example in a specific gene we can take A, A. In a diploid organism, the possibilities are A, small and capital A, small a. Now let's assume this capital A frequency which is equals to 0.3. Small a and small a has a frequency of also 0.3, and capital A, wait a second, no, sorry, it is not capital A. For frequencies, we take a single allelic frequencies. If we take small a to be 0.3, then the remaining frequency will be the for capital A. Now these both are considered as P and Q. These are allelic frequencies for the allele. Now, for finding out the probability of getting AA, this one is calculated with P square or 0.7 whole square, and for capital A, it is 0.3 whole square, and for capital A small a, it is 2 into 0.7 into 0.3. Now if we multiply all this and add them, we should get all their alleles or the combinations should come to be 1. This is what is stated here. Hence p square plus 2pq plus q square equals 1. This is a binomial expansion of p plus q whole square. When another way of we can just represent it as 0.7 plus 0.3 whole square, which is obviously equal to 1 square and which is equals to 1. When the frequency measured differs from expected values, the difference direction indicates the extent of evolutionary change. If there is a change, this is for a isolated or a perfect population which follows all the Hardy-Weinberg, like which is not affected by any of the evolutionary forces, like any of the evolutionary forces. In such a case, for such a population, this value should be equal to 1 or should be very close to 1. If not, if there is a change or it is not equal to 1, that probably means that there is an evolutionary force acting on the population. Disturbance in genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, that is, change of frequency of alleles in a population, would then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. If there is a change in frequency, if it's not equal to 1, like after addition and all, it's not still not equal to 1, there must be an evolutionary force acting, and this would lead to evolution. 5 factors are known to affect. These are the factors which will affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. These factors are called evolutionary factors or evolutionary forces. These are gene migration, gene flow, same one, it can be called gene migration or gene flow. The second one, genetic drift. Third one, mutation. Fourth one, genetic recombination, and natural selection. When migration of a select section of population to another place and population occurs, gene frequencies change in the original as well as the new population. New genes, alleles, are added to the new population, and these are lost from the old population. There would be a gene flow if this gene migration happens multiple times. If the same changes occur by chance, it is called genetic drift. Okay, sometimes the change in allele frequency is so different in a new sample of population that they become a different species. The original drifted population becomes founders, and the effect is called as the founder effect. Microbial experiment shows that the pre-existing advantageous mutations, when selected, will result in observation of new phenotypes over few generations. This would result in speciation. Okay, basically in microbial experiments, it was proved that like if we take if we take a population, microbial population, and there was a change in environment, and this there was also a mutation in the organism, and if we assume this mutation was beneficial for the organism to survive in the new environment, only that organism due to the mutation will survive, and remaining organisms will go extinct. So this will lead to a new species formation. Natural selection is a process in which heritable variations enabling better survival are enabled to reproduce and leave greater number of progeny. A critical Okay, let's read natural selection again. That gave a definition of natural selection is a process. It is a process in which heritable variation enabling better survival are enabled to reproduce and leave greater number of progeny. It must be a heritable variation, otherwise there would be no chance for the progeny to survive. Only the organism which had the variation would survive until its end of its lifespan, and remaining organism would go extinct. Only when the change or variation is heritable would the new organism survive and would lead to speciation. A critical analysis makes us believe that variation due to mutation or variation due to recombination during gametogenesis or due to gene flow or genetic drift results in changed frequency of genes and alleles in future generation. If just because like if we assume there is a population with a there is a specific population, and this population there is we saw an example here, like if we imagine a large bird population, and here there is 80% A dominant and 20% A recessive. This is the allelic frequency where 80% of the population had this A allele and 20% had this A allele, this small A allele. Now, if just 5 birds out of this large bird population fly to a nearby island by chance, among them 2 carry A and 3 carry small a. So in the island, the frequency is changed drastically. Here, smallest population would be, allelic frequency would be 60%, whereas the capital A frequency would be 40%. This is by just by chance, and this is very different from the original population, which had 80 to 20 percentage. Over time, this founder population in the new island may evolve very differently because the starting gene pool is also very different. These are the famous real world examples. Okay. Coupled to enhance reproductive success, natural selection makes it look like different population. Natural selection can lead to stabilization in which more individual acquire mean character value, directional change, more individual acquire value other than the mean character value, or disruption, more individuals acquire peripheral character value at both ends of the distribution curve. Let's read that again. Natural selection makes it look like different population. Okay, these are three kinds of ways how natural selection works. Like in the first way, if we see, okay, let's assume there is a habitat. This y-axis indicates number of individuals with the phenotype. Now, this is the line where medium-sized individuals are favored. Let's assume medium-sized individuals in a specific habitat are more favored by natural selection. In such a case, the organisms, uh, we are only not only talking about one kind of species, we are talking about a population. It might consist anything, but the main favorability condition is medium-sized individuals. No matter which organism in that specific habitat, medium-sized individuals are favored. We see the first graph, peak gets higher and narrower, meaning uh, like in such a situation, only all the organisms in the surrounding will become will continue to grow same as other. Like, okay, I'll explain it later. Okay, let's see the next topic, that is a brief account of evolution. About 2 billion years ago, or 2000 million years ago, that is MYA, million years ago, the first cellular forms of life appeared on Earth. The mechanism of how non-cellular aggregates of giant macromolecules could evolve into cells with membranous envelope is not known. That's what they said before as well. Some of these cells had the ability to release oxygen. The reaction could have been similar to the light reaction in photosynthesis, where water is split in with the help of solar energy captured and channelized by appropriate light harvesting pigments. Slowly, single-celled organisms became multicellular organisms. By the time of 500 million years ago, invertebrates were formed and active. Jawless fish probably evolved around 350 million years ago. Seaweeds and few plants existed probably around 320 million years ago. We are told that the first organism that invaded the land were plants. They were widespread on the land. When animals invaded land, the fish with stout and strong fins could move on land and go back to water. This was about 350 million years ago. In 1938, a fish caught in South Africa happened to be a coelacanth, which has thought to be extinct. These animals called lobe fins evolved into the first amphibians that lived on both land and water. There are no specimens of these left with us. However, these were ancestors of the modern day frogs and salamanders. The amphibians evolved into reptiles. They lay thick-shelled eggs which do not dry up in sun like those of amphibians. Again, we only see their modern day descendants, the turtles, tortoises, and crocodiles. In the next 200 million years or so, reptiles of different shapes and sizes dominated the earth. Okay, let's see the graph for basically a diagram. A sketch of evolution of plant forms through geological periods. A very important diagram. Both these diagrams are very important. The first is chlorophyte ancestors, tracheophyte ancestors, Rhynia type plants, Xylophyton, and this led to, from tracheophyte ancestors, it's believed that bryophytes came into existence. They were there from the Carbonaceous era, Carboniferous time. Then came, if we see here, these lycopods, arborescent lycopods, did not make it into the modern era but were ended in the Permian era itself. They existed only for some time, and most of the types of plants like horsetails, ferns, ginkgos, conifers, natales, cycads, angiosperms, dicotyledons, flowering plants, monocots, everything came from Xylophyton. Now, as for representative evolutionary history of vertebrates through geological periods, early reptiles, these are extinct. These are extinct, and here from sauropsids, it is believed that turtles came into existence. Then also lizards as well, and then from synapsids came plesiosaurs, theocodonts, therapsids, and mammals. From early reptiles, sauropsids came theocodonts. From dinosaurs extinct, from here there's a branch leading to birds, and somewhere here there is a direct line leading to crocodiles. Anyways, let's read this again. These are all very important details. Remember all the years and what and all happened. Single-celled organism became multicellular forms, and from 2 billion years ago, single-cellular organism formed, and by that, after some time, slowly single-cellular organisms developed into multicellular organisms. And by the time of 500 million years ago, invertebrates were formed, and they were active as well. Jawless fish probably evolved around 350 million years ago, and seaweeds and few plants existed probably around 320 million years ago. Very important points. Jawless fish 350 million years ago, 500 million years ago were invertebrates. 350 million years ago it is jawless fish. 320 million years ago it is seaweeds. We are told that the first organisms that invaded the land were plants. specifically lichens. They were not lichens. I think they are the lichens are the first plants to colonize rocks. I'm not sure if they are the one who invaded the land first as well. They were widespread on land when animals invaded land. Fish with a stout and strong fins could move on land and go back to water. This was about 350 million years ago. It might be best to write it down. Evolution 4 billion years ago. Organic molecules 3 billion years ago. It was self-replicating organic molecules. Giant organic molecules. 2 billion years ago. It was first unicellular life. And 5 billion years ago, I mean not 5 billion, it is 5 million years, 500 million years ago, it was time for invertebrates were active. Invertebrates were active. And I think 320 million years ago, the weeds came into existence. Jawless fish evolved around 350 million years ago. Jawless fish evolved, and 320 million years ago, seaweeds were there. We are told that the first organisms that invaded land were plants. Second note, fishes with strong fins and a long snout came in And out of the ocean, this was about 350 million years ago. That okay. This okay. In 1938, a fish caught in South Africa happened to be a silicon. It might also be an important information to remember. Extinct species of was caught. Now let's go back to the textbook. Which was thought to be extinct. These animals, called lobefins, evolved into the first amphibians that lived on both land and water. There are no specimens of these lobefins. They are completely extinct. However, these are the ancestors of modern day frog and salamander. Amphibians evolved into reptiles. And these reptiles laid thick shelled eggs which do not get dried up in sun, unlike the amphibians. And similarly, we don't have any specimen of the first evolved reptiles. We only see their modern day descendants, the turtles, tortoises, and crocodiles. In the next 200 million years or so, reptiles of different shapes and sizes dominated the earth. Giant ferns, pteridophytes were present, but they all failed to form coal deposits slowly. Some of these land reptiles went back into water to evolve into fish-like reptiles probably 200 million years ago. The name ichthyosaurs is very important to remember. Example, ichthyosaurs. The land reptiles were, of course, the dinosaurs. The biggest of them, Tyrannosaurus rex, was about 20 feet in height and had a huge, fearsome dagger-like teeth. About 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs suddenly disappeared from Earth. We do not know the true reason. Some say climatic changes killed them. Some say most of them evolved into birds. The truth may live in between. Small-sized reptiles of that era still exist today. The first mammals were like shrews. Their fossils are small-sized. Mammals were viviparous and protected their unborn young inside the mother's body. Mammals were more intelligent in sensing and avoiding danger, at least. When reptiles came down, mammals took over this earth. There were in South America mammals resembling horse, hippopotamus, bear, rabbit, etc. Due to continental drift. When South America joined North America, these animals were overridden by North America fauna. Due to the same continental drift, pouch mammals of Australia survived because of lack of competition from any other mammal. The first mammals were like shrews. This is also an important statement here. The There were mammals resembling a horse, hippopotamus, bear, and rabbit in the South America. Due to continental drift, South America joined North America. These animals were overridden by North American fauna, and due to this continental drift, pouched mammals of Australia survived because of lack of competition from any other mammal. Lest we forget, some mammals live wholly in water, like whales, dolphins, seals, sea cows are some examples. Evolution of horse, elephant, dog, etc. are special stories of evolution. You will learn about these in higher classes. The most useful story is the evolution of man with language skills and consciousness. A rough sketch of the evolution of life forms, the times of geological scale, are indicated in the above figures. Now, coming to the 6.9 topic, the last topic being origin and evolution of man. Origin and evolution of man. About 15 million years ago, primates called Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus were existing. They were hairy and walked like gorillas and chimpanzees. Ramapithecus was more man-like, while Dryopithecus was more ape-like. Few fossils of man-like bones have been discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania. These revealed hominid features, leading to the belief that about 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates walked in East Africa. They were not taller than 4 feet but walked upright. 2 million years ago, Australopithecines probably lived in East African grasslands. Evidence shows they hunted with stone weapons but essentially ate fruit. Some of the bone among the bones discovered were different. This creature was called the first human-like being, the hominid, and was called Homo habilis. The brain capacities were between 650 to 800 cc. They probably did not eat meat. Fossils discovered in Java in 1891 revealed the next stage, the Homo erectus, about 1.5 million years ago. Homo erectus had a large brain capacity of around 900 cc. Homo erectus probably ate meat. The Neanderthal man with a brain next is Neanderthal man with a brain size of 1400 cc lived in Near East and Central Asia between 1 million and 40,000 years back. They used hides to protect their body and buried their dead. Homo sapiens arose in Africa and moved across continents and developed into distinct races. During Ice Age, between 75,000 years to 10,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens arose. Prehistoric cave art developed, but 18,000 years ago, one such cave painting by prehistoric man can be seen at Bhimbetka rock shelter in Raisan district of Madhya Pradesh. Agriculture came around 10,000 years back and human settlement started. The rest of what happened is a part of human history of growth and decline of human civilization, which we will see in social, or which we already saw in social. Nothing much, just some two paragraph given here describing something. The first primates discovered about 50 million years ago were Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus. Dryopithecus, okay, they were hairy like, they were hairy and walked like gorillas and chimpanzees. Dryopithecus was ape-like. They were like ape, like monkeys or gorillas, but Ramapithecus was more man-like compared to Dryopithecus. And man-like bones were discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania, and these revealed hominid features, leading to the belief that about 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates walked in Eastern Africa. First discovery of primates were Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus, which were about 15 million years ago. Then fossils were discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania, which revealed that there were hominid features, organisms with more man-like features that lived in South Africa about 3 to 4 million years ago. These man-like primates walked in Eastern Africa. They were not taller than 4 feet, but they walked upright, not like uh, Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus, who walked like chimpanzees and gorillas. These guys, that is the primates which were discovered in Eastern Africa and were not 4 feet tall, they walked upright. And about 2 million years ago, Australopithecines probably lived in Eastern Africa grassland, the same land these hominid creatures lived. Australopithecines also lived there in the Eastern African grasslands, and evidence shows that These Australopithecines hunted with stone weapons but ate fruit. Some of the bones among the bones discovered were different. This creature was called after Australopithecines. Some of the bones discovered were more human-like and different, and this creature was called the first human-like being, the hominid, and was called Homo habilis. The first human-like creature is not Australopithecines, Dryopithecines, or Ramapithecines. It is Homo habilis. And the brain capacity was between 650 to 800 cc centimeter cube. They probably did not eat meat. Now fossils discovered in Java in 1891 revealed the next stage after Homo habilis, that is Homo erectus. Homo erectus, that was about 1.5 million years ago. 2 million years ago, Australopithecines lived. After some time, Homo habilis was discovered, then or started. Then 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus was first identified, the next stage. Homo erectus had a large brain capacity of around 900 centimeter cube, and Homo erectus probably ate meat. Next was the Neanderthal man with a brain size of about 1400 cc, lived in Near East and Central Asia between 1 million to 40,000 years back, and they used hides to protect their body and buried their dead. Important point, they used hides to protect their body and buried their dead. Homo sapiens arose in Africa and moved across continents and developed into distinct races during Ice Age between 75,000 to 10,000 years ago. Modern Homo sapiens arose. Prehistoric cave art developed. Okay, wait a second. After Neanderthal man during the Ice Age, that is 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens arose. Prehistoric cave art about 18,000 years ago. One such cave paintings by prehistoric humans can be seen at Bhimbetka rock shelter in Raisan district of Madhya Pradesh. And agriculture came around 10,000 years back, and human settlement started. The rest of what happened is a part of human history of growth and decline of civilization. Now, summary. Origin of life on Earth can be understood only against the background of origin of universe, especially Earth. Most scientists believe chemical evolution, that is, formation of biomolecules, preceded the appearance of the first cellular forms of life. The subsequent events as to what happened to the first form of life is a conjectured story based on Darwinian ideas of organic evolution by natural selection. Diversity of life forms on Earth has been changing over millions of years. It is generally believed that variations in a population result in variable fitness. Other phenomena like habitat fragmentation and genetic drift may accentuate these variations, leading to appearance of new species and hence evolution. Homology is accounted for by the idea of branching descent, study of comparative anatomy, fossils, and comparative biochemistry provides evidence for evolution. Among the stories of evolution of individual species, the story of evolution of modern man is the most interesting and appears to parallel evolution of human brain and language. That is the reason we probably read about brain sizes here, with Neanderthal man having 1400 cc. Okay, then with that the chapter is completed.